Hello, it's Ryan from 2minutetennis.net, and in this video, I'm going to help you with every stroke in your game. I'm going to give you the checkpoints of every single stroke so you can review your footage of your own strokes. I hope you're filming yourself, and you can see if you're doing what I suggest you do in this video. Now, I got to tell you, this information comes from Vic Braden, Hall of Fame tennis coach. People say, that Vic Braden forgot more about tennis than most coaches will ever know in their lifetime, and I completely agree. An incredible man, an incredible coach, and I highly recommend you check out his books and videos. Please look up Vic Braden for yourself as a player and also for your students if you're a coach. So let's go over first the forehand volley. Now this is the volley grip that I suggest that you use. I want you to put the base knuckle of your index finger on panel number 3, the Eastern forehand grip. And I want you to put your heel pad on the corner between panels 2 and 3. So what I call 2.5. And yes, I'm going to ask you to use different grips on both your forehand and backhand volley, and I'll explain why in a second. So let's talk about the forehand volley. There are 4 checkpoints, and I'm going to go over them quickly right now. There's the ready position, there's the turn, there's the contact, and then there's the finish. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4. You want to understand each checkpoint, and we're going to go over them. First, the ready position. Get your racket up in front of you with your elbows out. You'll notice my elbow is in front of my shoulder. I don't have my elbows behind. I have my elbows out in front. I want my elbow in front of my shoulder because that's how I'm going to make sure I contact the ball, not scrunched in, but out. So your ready position should be ready, not waiting and not starting. It's called a ready position. So don't just start or be waiting, be ready in your ready position. And when you're waiting in your ready position, you can be waiting in your forehand volley grip. Knuckle on 3, heel pad on 2.5. You want your elbows out in the ready position. It's kind of like I tell my students to put tennis balls in their armpits and raise the elbows until the balls fall out. And the reason you want to have that ready position is because when you turn, now it makes for a nice flat racket. You see a lot of coaches and a lot of players, they talk about keep the elbow in front. And all that does is open up your racket, especially if you use the standard grip that is taught around the world, which I don't teach, but the standard grip is the continental. So now you've got the elbow in front of you, and now all of a sudden you look at students and it's like keep your hand in front and their racket is wide open. So the key to this is that slight grip difference and that elbow up, and now look at the difference in my racket. So your ready position, split step. Now when you turn, you're going to turn and you want both hands to go off to your right. This is where I ask my students to pretend, and sometimes I'll use like a pickup tube, but here I've got a mop handle, or it's actually a broom handle. And when I ask my students to turn, I want them to turn as if there's a broom handle on their wrists. When you turn this way, it then makes it very easy to direct your racket toward your target, because what you're going to do is put your non-hitting hand in the way of your racket on its way to the target. So imagine you are my target. Well, I'm going to turn with the broom handle on my wrists pointing toward the camera. And then I'm going to move my racket toward the camera, keeping my left hand, since I'm right-handed, keeping my left hand out, and I move my racket toward my left hand, which helps me direct the ball and makes me more consistent. Now you might be thinking, what about the chopping? What about slice? The more slice you put on the ball, the harder it is to control. Now you might be looking at some pros who will really chop the heck out of the volley. Great, but pros aren't watching my videos. Recreational players who comb YouTube are looking for my videos, are looking through YouTube, looking for videos on how to improve. So I would actually suggest you put less spin on the ball and you hit a flatter volley. Flat volleys are easier to control than chopping and spin and lots of wrist. So elbows out, split step in your ready position. When your opponent hits, you do a little hop. You're going to turn with both hands. You're going to hit with a very flat racket, and you're going to move your racket to your non-hitting hand. When you're done, have the feeling like your strings are still facing your target. Now, just a little bit of ideas on the low, medium, and high volley. Just be sure that when you turn, you set the racket at the height where you're going to be contacting. So let's say the ball is high. You want to set the racket high and then finish high. If the ball is medium, you're going to set the racket medium and then go to your left hand or your non-hitting hand. If the ball is low, go low. So don't be going up here to make contact down here. If the ball is low, set the racket low and then volley to your non-hitting hand. The elbows out in the ready position is a game changer for volleyers who have been told to have the elbow in, which just leads to having the racket wide open. Get your elbow out, and that's why you want the elbows out in the ready position, so that when you turn, it's already set for you. All right, the forehand underspin. Let's talk about the forehand underspin. Forehand underspin is the same exact grip, and it's a slight variation to the volley. It's still 4 checkpoints. There's checkpoint number 1, checkpoint number 2, 3, which is the contact, and 4. So instead of a very flat contact on the volley, typically the underspin is going to be hit farther back. And now we're going to be hitting with a slight canoe to the swing, slightly down to contact and slightly up. Again, we're not looking for more spin. Like if I put ketchup on a hamburger, it's not like the more ketchup I put on, the better. And I take jars and jars of it. Typically, when people think of underspin, they think the more slice, the better. That's not how things work. If you put a little bit of slice, it can help actually keep the ball low because the ball floats. But the more slice, the more it floats, and when it hits the ground, it just dies, and it's so much easier for your opponent. So don't think of putting a ton of slice on your underspin, which is actually why I call it an underspin and not a slice. So you're in your same ready position, you're gonna turn, now the racket goes a little bit farther, so think instead of 90 degrees on your volley and 180 for the ground stroke, you're gonna go to 135, which is in between the two. 90 and 180, 135. Now we're going to go slightly down to contact. The racket's going to be very straight up and down as you hit. You don't want a wide open racket when you hit a slice, because if you're a golfer, you know what happens with a golf club that's wide open when you hit a golf ball. Ball shoots up into the air. So get your elbow out and the racket will be very square against the back of the ball. And then you'll come back up again to your non-hitting hand. It's just a longer volley that goes slightly down and slightly back up. From the back, it looks like this. That's the underspin. You can do that, and it's a beautiful way to return a serve, especially if somebody's hitting really fast serves. You don't have to take this big wild swing. You can just take a nice, easy underspin, direct it back down the center, and then recover back to the middle. All right, forehand ground stroke. There are 6 forehand checkpoints that I'm going to teach you. First, I've got the Topspin Pro here to demonstrate this. Love this thing. You know what to do. Check out my affiliate link in the description below. I'll even pin it in the first comment. It would mean the world to me if you got a Topspin Pro for at-home practice using my affiliate link below. So thank you so much. All right, 6 forehand topspin checkpoints. There's the ready position, the unit turn, the drop, the contact, the extension, but I can't go too high, so I'll choke up because I'll hit the ceiling, and then the finish. And there's about 3 inches of snow outside, otherwise I'd be doing this video on court. So split, that's checkpoint 1, checkpoint 2, 3, 4, I'm going to choke up so I don't hit the ceiling, 5, and then 6. So the same ready position. Don't let the racket be close to you. Keep a distance between you and the racket. I like to tell my students, imagine that your racket smells and you're trying to keep it away from you because you don't want it to, get too close to your nose. So you see a lot of people, they're like this. If I see someone like this, typically it's a lower level player. If I see them like this, it's a higher level player. So keep the distance between you and the racket. When you take the racket back, take it back with both hands. And what I like to suggest to people is that they have their hand, elbow, and shoulder all at a similar height. So don't take the racket down low because then you lose gravity, assisted racket speed. And don't take the racket super high because if the ball comes fast and you're drawing this big, gigantic circle, it can be late. So you kind of want the best of both worlds here. So take the racket back with both hands, hand, elbow, shoulder, all at a similar height. By taking it back with both hands, you get a nice coil, and then we can use that uncoil throughout the stroke. When we drop the racket, we're going to drop the racket down, and we're going to drop the racket below contact height. And here's the key. Lower your body to help that happen and close your racket face. Closing the racket face means tilting the strings down. Think anywhere from 30 to 45 degrees, depending on the grip that you use. When your racket is closed, that helps you to have your racket square or a few degrees closed as you're hitting the ball. You can get away with having your racket a few degrees closed as you're hitting if you have a tremendous amount of racket speed, because that helps drag the ball up over the net even with the racket slightly closed. Most recreational players I see who struggle hitting topspin, they have their racket straight up and down. I wish I had a coin in my pocket at the moment, but I could take a coin and balance it on the edge of my racket. That leads to the racket being wide open, which makes people want to, roll over the ball for topspin. And you really can't roll over the ball for topspin, but what they're trying to do is square up their racket. So if you're used to hitting the ball out a lot and the ball just tends to sail on you, it's because your racket's opening before you hit the ball. So close your racket as you drop, feel your palm face the ground, and then go low to high as you're spinning the ball. Now, when it comes to hitting the ball, we want to use our legs to come back up. And if you can straighten your legs by the time you contact the ball, the energy goes through your legs into the ball and you get a tremendous amount of speed from the ground. And as you're hitting, you want to be going from low to high, right? Not across. You want to be going up. I mean, topspin is a horizontal axis shot. We're going from 6 o'clock to 12 o'clock on the ball. And at contact, you want to have the feeling like you're waving to your opponent. I see a lot of recreational players and they hit with their non-hitting hand down. You can actually look at a picture of someone hitting the ball and know what level they are. If their non-hitting hand is down, lower level player. If their non-hitting hand is up, higher level player. After 25 years of coaching, you get to see these things in action. It's pretty cool. So as I'm hitting the ball, it's like I'm waving to my opponent. If the non-hitting hand drops, it becomes a counterweight. I hug myself and I can't turn my hips. So by having the non-hitting hand rising, and I can kind of practice that with the racket between my hands, that move of the non-hitting hand rising, which is what you see the pros doing, makes it very easy to turn my hips. After I hit the ball, I'm going to be going up toward the ceiling, not over to the wall. Tennis is a lifting sport. The more I swing up, the more the ball is going to spin down. So getting my racket to go up as I'm hitting the ball is going to help keep the ball in and give me consistency. And last, I'm going to catch the racket really high, and I'm going to try to catch it higher than eye level. So here is fine. When I teach people that, they say, Ryan, this isn't 1972. I know. I know it's not. But the laws of physics, the dimensions of the court, the biomechanics of the body haven't changed since 1972. So swinging up still has the same effect. And you watch Nadal, where he finishes up above his head, and he gets more spin than anyone. So tennis is a lifting sport. We want to go up. I realize as I'm doing this, I forgot to tell you about the grip on the forehand topspin. So let's go over that right now. There are 3 basic grips that I suggest that you use. You can either put your knuckle and heel pad on panel 3, which is the Eastern forehand. You can put your knuckle and heel pad on 3.5, which is halfway between the Eastern and semi-Western, or you can put your knuckle and heel pad on panel number 4. That is the semi-Western grip. So there's a lot of leeway in what you can do on the forehand volley. I would recommend those 3 basic grips. I wouldn't recommend that you use a full Western, which is the very bottom, panel number 5. I think it has too many limitations, especially for amateur players. All right, let's talk about the backhand volley. So as I mentioned, I talk about what is the forehand volley grip. That is because I teach a different backhand volley grip. Now, typically when people hear that, they say, well, the pros don't change their grips on the volleys. You're right. Or you hear, you don't have enough time to change your grips. That's where I completely disagree. You have plenty of time to change your grip. It is a lie, and I wouldn't say a lie. It is absolute misinformation that you do not have enough time to change your grip, because I am living proof that you have enough time to change your grip. So trust me, there's plenty of time to make this movement. And if I asked you, what do you think takes more time, a grip change or turning and stepping? Which coaches will they'll teach, turn, you'll take this little step out, step into the ball. What do you think takes more time? A grip change or turning and stepping? Of course, turning and stepping takes more time. The grip change is done in that time. What then somebody says is, yeah, but what if you're playing doubles and somebody blasts the ball right at you and you don't have enough time to change your grip? Well, if I don't have enough time to change my grip, which is about 1 volley out of 20, well, then I don't change it. And then I just use my forehand volley grip and I hit my volley, right? Like, what's fascinating to me is people say, well, what about when you can't change your grip and because of time, overhead, or somebody blasts the ball at you? And I just say, well, I don't change my grip then. And then I'm just like everyone else. Isn't that good? You're telling me not to change my grip. So I just hit a volley where I don't change my grip. But if I do have time to change my grip, I change it, and that helps me square up the racket against the back of the ball and hit a much better volley. Just like if I'm going to work and I have time to stop for coffee, I will. If I don't have time, I don't stop for coffee. It's that simple. And you learn to make that decision very quickly. Just like when a serve comes in and you learn to change your grip on the forehand or backhand return to serve, it's the exact same thing. So the ready position is the same in the volley, but now we got to talk about the volley grip. What you want to do is put the base knuckle of your index finger and your heel pad on panel 1.5. The corner between panels 1 and 2. When you do this, it helps you square up the racket against the back of the ball. And yes, you can hit low volleys with this grip. I mean, can't one-handed backhands hit low backhands with their full Eastern grip? You can easily get low volleys over the net with this grip, but it helps square up the racket against the back of the ball. So the ready position is the forehand volley grip. When the ball comes to our backhand, remember the elbows are out. When I turn, and because this elbow is out in my ready position, when I turn, my racket is very straight up and down. Where people get in trouble is they have a relaxed and athletic ready position, and they're like this, right? They're in this position, their elbows are down. So then when they turn, they do this. And now they're like a waiter or a waitress, and the elbow is down. Now the racket's open, and they either chop the heck out of it or they flip the racket over. Neither one of those is going to be consistent. So get your elbows out, and then when you turn, keep that elbow out. You basically have an L here that's drawn between the racket and the forearm. That gets the strings to face forward. Now when I volley with that slightly farther grip change than is typically taught in the industry, all of a sudden my strings face my target, and now my backhand volley is no longer my least consistent stroke. You hear people all the time, I got to work on my backhand volley. It's because they're using conventional techniques, what you hear day in and day out across the world. And to me, it's the certifications problems. It's not those coaches. It's the certifications that are teaching the one grip system, which I think just makes for neither a good forehand or backhand volley, for the idea that, well, you don't have enough time to change your grip. So it's actually, the whole idea is based on a falsehood. You do have time to change your grip, just like on a forehand ground stroke and backhand ground stroke, so use different grips to make those shots better. So when I turn, my back elbow's up, my hand is slightly below my racket, that actually gives me a nice strong wrist. You don't want to hit like this if you can help it. And now I'm going to make contact, and then after I hit, I step. And you want the arms to go apart. The faster this arm goes back, the faster I can move this arm. And it helps my racket go toward my target. From the front, it looks like this. Split. Look, I've already changed my grip. When I go to here, I've already changed my grip. The grip change is hidden in the turn. The idea that you don't have enough time to change your grip, that whole thought process is trying to help you in the 1 out of 20 volleys where you actually don't have enough time to change your grip. And I've talked to so many people, they only go to the net 6 times in a match if they play singles. Okay, so 6 times into 20, it'll be 3 or 4 matches before they ever go to the net in singles enough times that they won't have enough time to change their grip, right? Trying to reach that 20 times to the net. So trust me, you have plenty of time to change your grip. When we hit the ball, we're trying to hit very flat into the back. And on the high volley, we set it high and go out. On the medium volley, we set the racket medium and go out. And on the low volley, set your racket low and then go up. So it's forward, forward, slightly up. The less spin you put on the ball, the better when you're working on your volley and you're looking for consistency. All right, on the underspin backhand, same grip as the volley. Put your knuckle and heel pad on the corner between the Eastern backhand and the continental. It's the same volley grip. It's the same grip as the volley. And it's actually between the 2 grips that are typically taught on the one-handed backhand. What's typically taught is the continental grip for the slice and the Eastern backhand grip on the topspin. I'm going to ask you to be in between the 2, and here's why. I'm going to skip ahead to the contact on the underspin backhand. It's the same idea with the volley. When you hit an underspin backhand, you want your racket very straight up and down. So you want the racket to be able to balance a coin on the edge. Most players think that when you hit a slice, the racket's supposed to be wide open. Again, if you're a golfer and you have a lob wedge, what does the ball do? The ball doesn't go forward and low. The ball pops up into the air. So this is why you see people hit a slice back here and their ball pops up. They're like, why is my ball popping up? You want your racket to be only a few degrees open. And if it's a higher contact, the racket's going to be straight up and down. It's the lower ball that the racket, the lower contact, that the racket might be, up to 10 degrees open, but that's at the most. So what helps you is having that slightly farther grip, knuckle and heel pad on the corner between panels 1 and panel 2. So I've got my elbows out in my ready position. Remember, the ready position is the same because we don't know what stroke is coming to us because we're ready for everything. So it's all the same ready position. When the ball comes to us, we take the racket high and we want to think high, medium, high. So we're not going to go super low. It's high, medium, high. When we turn, I'll show you this from the back. When you turn, try to stay away from this. Try to keep your racket quite straight up and down. You're going to go down to the contact and you're going to go down with both hands initially. Have both hands go down. Because if you start going back too early, the racket will take over because you've already dispersed this energy and then you open up. So it's important that you go down with both hands. That also helps keep the racket more vertical, because if you let go, then the racket opens. You can help keep the racket very vertical, and then at contact, your racket is just slightly above the hand, and then you finish in what's called the left side of the letter V, where you could actually walk under your racket. Again, if you're a lefty, you'll reverse this. You go down, a little bit of underspin, your arms go apart, and your arms go apart to keep your body to the side. Left arm going back is an accelerant to the racket going forward, and it helps keep your racket tracking out towards your target rather than swinging across. Really work on the slice backhand, because the slice backhand is one of those shots that not a lot of players will say underspin. The underspin backhand is one of those shots that not a lot of players hit really well, and it can really differentiate you from your opponents so that your opponents, when they play you, they're dealing with a shot that they're not used to. All right, let's talk about the two-handed backhand, and I'm going to use the two-handed topspin, and I'll use the Topspin Pro for this. So remember the ready position. Now, if you're a one-handed backhand at the ground, at the baseline, if you have a one-handed topspin, then you can have your ready position with your left hand or your top hand on the throat. I would suggest if you're a two-hander, that you have both hands on the grip, especially on the return of serve. That way you don't have to move this hand down and then change this grip when the ball's coming in fast. So have your hands positioned correctly for a backhand, not necessarily the backhand grip, but if you're a two-hander, wait like this. If you're a one-hander, wait like this. So I'm going to be in my ready position here with both hands on the grip because I'm going to demonstrate a two-handed backhand. I'm going to show you the 6 checkpoints and then we'll go over the grip. So this is checkpoint number 1, checkpoint 2, checkpoint 3, 4, 5. I'm going to choke up so I don't hit the ceiling, and 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, let's look at the grips. First, the base knuckle and the heel pad on both hands are the same. Base knuckle and the heel pad. When it comes to the bottom hand, and I'm going to speak as a right-hander, as the bottom hand, you want the base knuckle and your heel pad to be on panel number 2. This is the continental grip. When it comes to the top hand, I would recommend that you put it on bevel number 7. This is the Eastern forehand grip for the other hand, for the left hand. The reason I'm saying bevel 7 is because when you count from the top all the way around, that's actually bevel 7 for a right-hander. So you've got the bottom hand as a continental and the top hand as an Eastern backhand grip. So the ready position is the same, right? Split step as my opponent hits and my elbows are out. If the ball comes to my forehand, I turn for a forehand and I slide the left hand up. If the ball's a backhand, I turn, I change my grip to a continental on the bottom hand, and now I turn. And one of the ways I like to explain this is when you turn on the two-hander, you should be able to turn around, face your racket, go back to your forehand, and you're in a ready position. It's just 180 degrees back. So I change my grip, I take my racket back, I'm moving around. Again, I could face face the back fence, and I'm in my ready position. From here, you can see my elbow is up. If the elbow drops, the racket opens. Show you this from the back. I turn, My elbow is up, it helps keep my racket up. That's why I want my elbows up in the ready position. Elbow up on the forehand, elbow up on the backhand. That's why the ready position should have the elbows up, because my ready position helps the next checkpoint be correct. And the second checkpoint helps the third checkpoint. It just goes along. So I turn with my elbow out, my elbow up. Then I'm going to try to get under this ball, and I'm going to get under it with a closed racket face so I can use my legs and drop my arms, and now my racket face is closed. Again, think between 30 and 45 degrees. You're going to do that manually, and you can feel your top hand. As a right-hander, that's my left hand, I can feel my hand turning and tilting my strings toward the ground. You want the strings tilted toward the ground so that your racket is square against the back of the ball, just like with the forehand ground stroke, forehand topspin. As I do this, I rotate my hips. I'm going up the back of the ball. I don't want to swing across. I want to extend up after hitting. It's like I'm going to hit the ceiling. I'm not going to hit the wall next to me. I'm going to go up, and then the finish, I let the arms relax, but you'll notice you can see my armpits. Air the armpit, ATA. When I turn, I'm going to finish and be up here. Look at my armpits. Hands high, elbows high. You can see my armpits when I'm done. You watch most recreational players, they finish and they're down across like this. Lift from the shoulders, just like Djokovic. Go up and then relax with the elbows. Don't use the elbows on the follow-through until your hands are higher than your head. So lift from your shoulders and then bend the elbows. From the side, I'm going to lift from my shoulders, and I'm choking up so I don't hit the ceiling, and then I bend. Here I bend my elbows. You see people all the time, they bend their elbows like they're doing bicep curls to hit the ball as they're actually striking. It makes the racket veer off to the side and they hit the frame all the time. They're not penetrating up and out, kind of like their racket's going up a staircase, forward and up through contact. So really important that you work on your two-handed backhand using those 6 checkpoints. On the topspin one-hander, the grip is different than on the two-hander. The grip is an Eastern backhand grip. This is where you're going to put the base knuckle of your index finger and your heel pad on panel number 1, the very top grip. Take the base knuckle, heel pad, put it on the very top. So the grip change is farther. Now, if you're someone who struggles with your backhand return to serve, if you're a one-hander, I've seen pros and I've also helped students, they will actually wait in the backhand grip. Again, elbows out. Now, this is your forehand and what it looks like hitting a forehand. This is going to be the backhand grip. So if you're finding that your opponent is picking on your backhand and just blasting the ball to your backhand, and you're struggling to find that grip in time, what you might actually do is you might say, you know what? I'm actually going to start in my backhand grip. That way, when the ball comes to you, you don't have to worry about the grip change. Then if the ball comes to your forehand, people find it easier to find the forehand grip than finding the backhand grip. So don't be afraid to use that backhand grip on the return of serve and actually wait in that grip. So there are 5 checkpoints with the one-handed backhand. There's the ready position. You'll see my left hand is on the throat of the racket now because it's one-hander. There's checkpoint number 1, checkpoint 2, checkpoint 3, 4, and 5. And I'll show you this from the back. So checkpoint number 1, remember the elbows are out. I tell my students, let me smell your armpits. Get your elbows out. Don't cover it up. If your armpits smell, let everyone know about it. Get your elbows out. Checkpoint number 2, you'll notice how straight up and down my racket is. So my racket's not laying open. If you can get your racket straight up and down with this elbow up, notice you can see this armpit. When you have the tip of the racket pointing up and the elbow out and you're drawing this L, you are in perfect position. Again, the knuckle and heel pad are on panel number 1. We want to get below this ball so we can spin up the back of it. So we need to drop the racket down. And what I like to tell my students is take your non-hitting hand and touch your left knee or your back knee. When you do this with your non-hitting hand, it helps you close the racket face and it makes sure that your non-hitting hand stays on the racket long enough. What most recreational players do, and it's a mistake and it leads to them not being able to hit topspin, is they let go at the top of the drop. When you do that, you've already used this. So it's no longer a counterweight because you've gone down, you're moving this arm back, and now this is done. It's already been used, that energy. And now when you swing across and open. So what we want to do is do what the pros do. The pros close the racket face prior to hitting in most shots, and their non-hitting hand gets in front of them. They drop their non-hitting hand in front of their pocket, in front of their thigh. Then after they spin, that's when this arm goes up, or after they contact the ball, then you see this arm going back. So don't throw it back, then hit and open, and you can see that didn't spin the Topspin Pro. Drop, the racket goes out away from the body, an inside out swing, just like all the other strokes, and the arms go apart and the racket is to the left side of your hand. Now you'll notice this finish. Chest is to the side, I'm hitting the ball that way. Chest is to the side, my arms are apart, but really look at this angle between my arm and racket. Why am I not teaching you this? Why am I not teaching you, point the tip of the racket off to the right? Because it just makes for a very inconsistent shot. Yes, you'll see the pros do that, but they're doing it after they hit the ball. They're not doing it as they're hitting. They're not actively flicking their wrist as they hit the ball. What I want you to do, and all pros use this finish, this left side of the letter V finish in certain situations, return of serve, down the line passing shots when they don't have a lot of time and their opponent's at the net and they just got to strike a really clean backhand, hitting the ball on the rise. Anytime there's a very difficult situation and the pro needs to increase the likelihood that they're consistent, you'll see them keep that wrist angle that they had throughout the stroke just to make sure that they don't use too much wrist and now the ball goes left or right. So when you're done right now, if you're struggling with consistency on your backhand, stay sideways and finish with the left side of the letter V. You've got the left side as a right-hander. Lefties look like this. You'll have the right side of the letter V. That tip right there changes lives. I mean, on the one-handed backhand. Get the grip and make sure you've got the left side of the V on the one-handed backhand. Makes for a world of improvement. All right, and by the way, remember, get your Topspin Pro. And if you don't have a Topspin Pro, it would mean the world to me if you went right now, or maybe after the video, and grab the affiliate link so that you can get a Topspin Pro and you can practice your strokes that you're learning in this video. So let's go over the overhead. There are 7 checkpoints on the overhead. I'll show you what it looks like. Checkpoint 1, the ready position. 2, 3, 4, I'm going to kneel so I don't hit the ceiling. 5, 6, 7. Watch it again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Remember, checkpoints are ways that you can stop the video of your own swing, film yourself hitting overheads, go through it in slow motion, and look for each checkpoint. Checkpoint number 1, ready position, obvious. Checkpoint number 2 is the turn. We want to turn not like this. Don't put your racket behind your head and point at the ball, right? You might teach that to a little tiny kid or like a beginner, or if you're teaching someone who's out of town and you're like, hey, just get the racket back and point to the ball. But it's really not what the pros do. When you watch the pros, they turn with both hands on their racket. They turn with both hands to be like a football quarterback or a baseball pitcher to be able to uncoil. So turn with both hands initially. That's checkpoint number 2. When you do that, you're going to be making a slight grip change. Remember, when you're at the net and you're hitting volleys, I suggest that you put your knuckle on panel 3 and your heel pad on 2.5. So when the ball goes up in the air, you're just going to change to a continental, which I already did. Here's my volley grip. Here's my continental. By the time I get my racket to here, I've already changed my grip. When you do this, you want your elbow slightly below your shoulder and you want your racket face closed. You want the racket face closed so that you can knock off the birthday hat. So one of the biggest mistakes you see with players on overhead is they go like this and they point their elbow forward, their palm faces up, they point the butt cap at the ball, and they point at the ball like this. What you want to do is turn like you're elbowing someone. When you turn like you're elbowing someone in the chest or the stomach, and your strings are pointing down, you're going to reach up as part of the throwing motion, but you're going to make this move where you're going to hit the birthday hat, and the racket passes in over the head. When you do this, it produces a circular swing. We want 360 degrees of movement, and that's going to happen because my elbow, which was back, now comes forward and up. And that you can see my racket is now on edge, right? You can see it's all connected. Each part is connected. You do the first part to help the second part. You do the second part to help the third part. It's like a row of dominoes that you knock over the first one, and the job of each domino is to knock over the next domino. So the job of the ready position is to help the turn. The turn is to help knock the party hat off. The party hat, knocking off the party hat, then helps your racket come around on edge. Now this is called the supinated position. My palm is facing to the left and my racket is on edge. After I knock off the party hat, my non-hitting hand is up. At this point, I start dropping my non-hitting hand and my racket comes around on edge. This position means I'm now ready to turn the racket as I'm hitting the ball. I come in over my head, my racket's on edge, and now I turn the racket as a way of pronating. Now I would highly recommend that you work on hitting side spin. And the reason I want you hitting side spin is because it's the easiest way to control your overheads. Now I took the arm off on the Topspin Pro and I'm going to show you how to pronate and put side spin on the ball because a lot of players, they get confused with this. So I've got my continental grip, I came in over my head, I pulled my elbow forward and up as I rotated. That naturally brings my racket around on edge like I'm going to hit the ball with my frame. So I'm going to kneel so I don't hit the ceiling. And as I'm going up, I'm going to spin the ball as I pronate. So I'm going up leading with the edge. I start turning the racket to present the strings to the ball. But I'm not going to present it flat against the ball. I'm going to be leading slightly still with the right edge as I'm hitting. And then after I hit the ball, my strings will face left. So they're facing to the, right. Here my strings are facing left. At contact, they're facing ever so slightly left. I spin and then I turn. So I don't want you to think of hitting flat into the back, but rather spinning the ball, and then after you hit, your strings face off to the right. Now players will say, well, Ryan, why point the strings off to the right? Why not just stay on edge? Because you're not accelerating with pronation. You know, if you hurt your hand, you go, ow, and you make this move. You slam your fingers in a drawer and you go, oh my gosh, I hurt myself, right? You could take a playing card or a credit card and you can throw it across the room making this move. Supinated position, and then you pronate. It's a really fast way to move the racket. So this is a great way to get tremendous amount of snap at the top. So you're snapping the forearm, not so much the wrist, but you're turning from in to out. I can remember as a kid, the nurses would use mercury thermometers to take my temperature, put it under my tongue, and they would go like this to snap the mercury thermometer, right? So that's the idea. We want to snap the racket, but we want to lead with the edge and start to turn, and it just so happens the contact is right here with this edge slightly in front as I'm spinning the ball. As I spin the ball, I'm going to be swinging off to the right of my target. If this is my target, I'm going to swing off to the right, keeping my body to the right, because remember, I'm trying to spin the ball. The ball goes where my strings point, but my racket's going from left to right, trying to get the ball to rotate for control. And when I'm done, I'm going to cross my arms. This is called a power X. And this position is what helps accelerate the racket. Because as you're bringing the arm up and then around, if you tuck it against your body, it's a reactive break. And then the racket accelerates. So checkpoint 1, checkpoint 2, 3, knock the party hat off. 4, racket's on edge. 5, spin the ball as you're tucking the non-hitting arm in. 6 is fully pronated. Make sure your strings are opposite of 4. And then checkpoint number 7. And remember, as you're hitting the overhead, hit side spin. And last is the serve. Let me see if there's a ball. All right, I found a ball. I'll use a foam ball so I don't break anything here. 7 checkpoints, just like on the overhead. So I've got checkpoint number 1, checkpoint number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You might recognize this from the overhead. So let's talk about the grip. It's the same grip as the overhead. Base knuckle of the index finger and your heel pad on bevel number 2. That is the continental grip. When you begin the serve, don't bounce the ball with your racket Because when you bounce the ball with your racket, you see a lot of beginners do this. They bounce the ball and then they serve. It promotes using the wrong grip. So I don't really let my students bounce the ball with their grip. They have to bounce the ball with their hand to help ensure that they have the proper grip. Now you might hear coaches say, yeah, but I like to have my students practice this drill and spin the ball. That's fine, that's one thing, but you don't really see pros doing that typically. You might find one or two who do it, but what you typically see is them just bouncing the ball with their hand, because the continental grip is the racket's on edge or slightly open. It's not pointing down. So if you're someone who bounces the ball with your racket, stop, only use your hand so that it promotes the actual grip. Checkpoint number two. Checkpoint number two occurs, and that's called palm down, because we coil first and then we toss and we get into this position. So it's important that we turn. So this is the beginning. We're sideways to our target. Back foot could be parallel to the baseline, front foot angled. My racket's resting on the ball. And then I'm going to turn and I'm going to rotate to get my back to be shown to my opponent. You don't want to serve facing forward, but rather we want to rotate and then toss. So I rotate like I'm coiling, like I'm a baseball pitcher who's going to unwind. I turn, and then when I toss, you'll see that my tossing hand is behind my tossing shoulder. That produces a rainbow for my toss. I want you to avoid tossing straight up in the air. If you toss straight up in the air, as you lean in and try to hit faster and faster, your body gets in front of the contact, and that's why so many people hit their fastest serves, or it's one of the reasons why players hit their fastest serves out. The ball always goes long because the racket's open. So we want to actually toss like a rainbow, and then we go out and chase the toss, and it helps close off the racket face to be able to get the ball into the box. So we want to rotate. My weight's going back as I'm rotating. I'm now ready to toss into the court. It's called the J-toss. We now toss into the court, and as I'm doing that, I'm preparing to bring my racket in over my head. Now, this is the baseline. I'm serving that way. You'll notice I'm not pointing the tip of the racket at the back fence. When I do this and I rotate and then I begin lifting my racket up, notice where the tip of my racket's pointing. It's pointing at you. It's pointing at the camera. And the reason, it becomes very easy then to knock the party hat off. And I'll wear it in a second, but this is what I call turn, toss, salute. So it's turn, toss, and like I'm in the military, I'm saluting. Turn, toss, salute. It's not turn, toss, become a waiter or a waitress. That's not what it is. It's turn, toss, salute. Now, the reason I suggest people use a birthday hat when they serve and when on their overhead is to get rid of any waiter's tray. Now, there are many coaches who talk about the birthday hat idea. I'm not forcing anyone to hit the birthday hat, because when I teach the birthday hat, I always get comments, you know, Sampras wouldn't have hit the birthday hat. Shapovalov doesn't hit the birthday hat. You're right. And if I was their coach, I wouldn't change a thing about their serves. I'm not going to change the way they serve. Like Sampras, for instance, Sampras's racket goes open like this, but he's not going into the waiter's tray, because when he gets into this position, his racket comes around closed. The players get into the waiter's position when their racket's open and they go up to the ball with an open racket. But if somebody doesn't hit the party hat, but their racket comes around slightly closed like this, then I'm all for it. It doesn't matter. The goal is to get into this position. Remember, each job is to help the next job be correct. So if you're doing this, but the racket comes around slightly closed, ready to pronate, you're good to go. That's fine. What I've noticed is that most players have to come this way with their racket coming in over their head, knocking off the party hat to have the chance to be like this. And when I say most players, I mean recreational players. So we've turned, we've tossed into the court. Now the baseline is here. I'm serving that way. I'm going to point the tip of the racket off to the right of me. I knock the party hat off the head. Now I'm going to drive my elbow forward and up. My tossing hand will now begin to drop once I hit the birthday hat. It'll reach out toward my target as my elbow's coming forward and up. You can see my racket is on edge. From here, it's just like the overhead. Now, and I would highly recommend that you work on the side spin serve. If you're struggling with your serve, work on the side spin serve. Not your flat serve, not your top spin, the side spin serve. Racket's on edge, side spin will give you the control you're looking for. We want to have the racket on its edge. we start to turn the racket as part of pronation, which is the fastest way we can move our hand. We're going to make this move, but as we hit the ball, we lead slightly still with the leading edge. So that edge is slightly in front. We spin the ball, and after we spin it, the strings are still facing off to the right. As I make this move, I tuck this arm against my body, and then I finish in what's called a power X. My arms are crossed. So this is what it looks like. I'm going to choke up so I don't hit the ceiling. So ready position, and when you have the continental grip, the racket is usually slightly open. Then turn, toss, salute, side spin, and cross your arms. Just like on the overhead, it's important that you aim to the right. What happens is people use a continental grip and they swing straight toward their target, and then the ball goes left. So if you're working on the continental grip for the first time, in your mind, aim 15, 20, 25 feet to the right. Actually look that way and try to hit that way. And the slight grip change will account for that, and the ball actually goes in. And that's when you can start to see the ball curve, which is tough for the returner. And it just increases the likelihood that you win. So again, I want to thank Vic Braden for this information. The information that I teach is Vic Braden. It's great base. It's Dennis Vandermeer, it's Welby Van Horn. These tennis giants of coaching laid the groundwork for players like myself to be able to bring you this information. So if you're interested in learning more about this system that I'm teaching, I would highly recommend that you go below and you click on greatbasetennis.com. It is not my website. It is Steve Smith's website that he built recently with Andy Fitzell, and it was just an amazing initiative that they started years ago in order to bring you the best possible information. And as I mentioned, it's all based in the biomechanics of the body, the laws of physics, and the dimensions of the court. So I hope this video becomes kind of a one-stop shop, library of technique for your game. Is there more to the story? Sure, this is the basic bones and structure of the swing, but you can't build a house on the sand on a beach. It'll fall apart. You have to have the foundation right, and this is the skeleton and the bare bones and structure of the technique. And if you use this video as a guideline to improve your technique, there's no doubt you're going to gain confidence, win more matches, and play much better tennis. This is Ryan Reedy from 2minutetennis.net. You got this.